Good morning, children. I hope you all have completed the topic which I have taught you previously. Today, I am going to teach you the rest of the policy. Before that, let's understand what was the advantages of liberalization policy. Liberalization policy brought changes in the economy in terms of licensing policy which we had followed previously. Now it was removed. There was increase in foreign investment. Now the condition of foreign exchange reserve was proper. It increased. Previously, as we have seen, it was deficit. There was total control over inflation. Now we had increase in consumption and control over price. We were also able to reduce the dependence on external commercial borrowings, which we were forced to take it, and we also able to check on corruption. So these were the advantages of liberalization, but there were some disadvantages too. Because of liberalization, the unemployment condition was increased and we had loss to domestic unit because we were totally dependent on foreign companies. So our domestic companies, domestic unit were ignored, and increase in dependence on foreign nation has also created trouble for the nation. As previously we were following closed economy, now we started open economy, so it created unbalanced development. So this was disadvantages of liberalization. Now let's see who brought these ideas to the nation. Actually, the NEP policy was totally the concept of none other than Mr. Manmohan Singh, who was the finance minister at that time. Before that, the Indian financial condition was totally worse. We were about to be bankrupt when Mr. Manmohan Singh has presented his historic budget. The economy was well on its way to recovery. Mr. Manmohan Singh has controlled over the bureaucratic control and licensing permit Raj, and now he implemented such policy that India could have high growth path of 6 to 7% during his 5 years. So we can say that Manmohan Singh was the father of Indian reforms. NEP policy was his idea. Now let's see what is the next policy. Next policy is privatization. Privatization means transferring of ownership, management and control over government sector. Privatization means shedding of ownership or management of government owned enterprises, removal of rigid control over private sector and giving freedom to take any kind of decision. Before 1991, the public sector was given greater priority, but the result was not achieved as we wanted. So it was necessary to brought new changes in the private sector. We all have already seen that the private sector was not given this much privilege before 1991, but after implementation of NEP policy, the privatization gave a lot of ways to the private sector. So overall, we can say what is privatization? It refers to the transfership of the ownership, management, control over the government sector to the private sector. It is done to improve efficiency and increase competitiveness of the private sector. Private sector can be done by two ways. But before going into the ways, why it was implemented, that is very much necessary to know. Government was trying to improve the public sector condition, but the public sector condition was not improving. So it was needed to give the control over the private sector so that the private sector can perform well and can give their effort to build the economy of the nation. But it also tried to improve the public sector by giving them special status like Navaratna and Mini Ratna. These were given greater managerial and operational autonomy. Many of you may have a doubt what is Navaratna and Mini Ratna. These are those big companies which was under control of the government sector, and like SAIL, IOCL, Indian Oil Corporation Limited. These There are many number of companies are there. These companies were given special status in the economy so that they can encourage and they can perform really nice and bring lot of growth in the economy. So, simply speaking, if we talk about what is privatization, so it means like permitting the private sector to set up industries which was previously reserved for the public sector. Main reason for privatization was in currency of public sector undertaking are running in losses. We have already seen the public sector was not performing well. So, production capacity was same as this was underutilized. To increase the competition and efficiency, it was needed to bring the privatization. So we brought, like today we can see there are number of private companies like Reliance, Flipkarts, Microsoft. There are number of companies which are as private sector, but they are performing so nicely, so well that bring a lot of growth in the economy. So, if we see what are two ways through which privatization can be done, privatization can be done by the two ways, like by withdrawal of the government from ownership and management of public sector. First step was that the ownership and management of the public sector was taken over, and second, it was outright sale of public sector to the private sector. Means the public sector part of the equity was sale off to the private sector. This process is also known as disinvestment. The number of industry reserved for the public sector was previously in threefold classification. We have seen the public sector was limited to 17 industries. Now the number was reduced and rest all the industry was given to the private sector. Only 4 industry was kept in hand with the public sector, that was transport and railways, atomic energy, defense, and mining of atomic minerals and energy. So, this step was taken to bring the privatization in the nation. Okay, so I told what is in this, if you see, one is very important point. What do you mean by disinvestment? Disinvestment is nothing but when the public sector undertaking are sold off to the private sector, means the part of the public sector, the share of the public sector has been sold to the private sector. This process is known as disinvestment. And the purpose for the privatization is to improve the financial discipline and the facilitate modernization in the nation. This was the main purpose. That's why privatization is brought to the nation. Okay. So now, if we see the objective of the privatization, it was to increase the efficiency and competitiveness, to strengthen the industrial management, to earn more and more foreign currency, also to utilize the resources optimally, and achieve industrial growth in the country. This was the main purpose of privatization. Now let's see what were the advantages after bringing it. After bringing privatization, we found financial discipline in the nation. Now, what is financial discipline? Previously, the money circulation in the economy, or we can say money supply in the economy, was not proper. Now, by bringing the privatization in the nation, what the situation was, the money flow was stimulate and it was in a proper channel, proper way. So we had a financial discipline. Whenever we wanted money, we were able to arrange it. So there was financial discipline in the nation. Second, it improved the efficiency of the management. Now, privatization made the entrepreneur free to make any quick decision without the interference of the government. So efficiency, managerial skill was increased. There was no political pressure or any kind of formalities. Third, there was reduction in the deficit. As we have seen, there was a lot of deficit in our country. Before 1990, there was a financial burden in the government. So, in any kind of development and non development expenditure, we were not able to do. So, by these all, when we have given this to private sector, we were able to increase this, and we were also able to increase the competitiveness among the various companies. Now the companies were not only targeted to produce consumer good and the only capital goods. Now they all were involved and encourage competitiveness in domestic level also and international level also. Due to this, FDI increase means privatization provides strong status to inflow of the foreign direct investment. Other countries also like to invest in our country because of our market was increasing. But whenever we have see some advantages, we have some disadvantages also. There was negative impact of privatization was that we totally neglected the social interest. Now, private sector mainly work with the objective of profit maximization, which may be done at the cost of social welfare of the people. Now, people demand and people need was totally ignored. There was high priced goods also because privatization brought with the motto of increasing the profits. So they were setting more prices, and when the prices will be more, demand will be more. It work with the market mechanism, like when price rise, demand by those who cannot pay the prices would fall. So if the countries, these may become major problem for the inflation. So it condition was like we had a highly priced goods. Even there was a monopolistic control in the economy. Privatization was unable to control over the monopoly because the private owner may have a monopoly control over the market. The situation also characterized by concentration of power in few hands because we have given all the power to the private sector. It also created hindrance in that was to bring the employment, full employment. But due to privatization, we were not able to bring the full employment in the nation because of many of interest of to earn profit only. So they were not was focusing on the providing the social benefit and bringing the full employment in the nation. So this was the advantages and disadvantages of private sector. Now the third policy of NEP, new economic policy, was globalization. Now what do you mean by globalization? It refers to free interaction between the countries in various fields. If we are going to interact with the various countries, people in the field of culture, in the field of business, or if we can say in the field of investment, outsourcing, technology, these all interaction when we used to do with the other nation, that situation, that process is known as globalization. We can define globalization as a system related to increasing interaction, growing economic independence, and economic integration in the world economy. Globalization has a wide concept. It is a process associated with increasing the relationship with the other country, growing economic independence, and also economic integrations. So, globalization encouraged integration of the economy with the other world economy. Now, it was an outcome, if we say it was an outcome of the various policy that aimed at transforming the world into the greater integrated economy. Integrated economy means united economy. We were able to make the network, we were able to make the activities on the subject of economics, social, geographical. So now we were able to connect with each and every countries. It reduced the trade barriers. It was able to allow free flow of capitals, free flow of technology, free flow of movement of technology. So globalization brought a laurel to the country and lot of changes in the nation. So what was the measures we have taken for the globalization? First was rise in equity participation of foreign investment. It is very, very important point. Rise in equity participation of foreign investment means when we interacted to the other nation, now we were able to build a strong bond between the nations. So our foreign direct investment was about to increase. Before 91, it was around only 40%, but now it was approx more than 51%. Second major step was taken under this, that was devaluation of rupee. Before 91, if you remember, the BOP situation was adverse and also the foreign exchange reserve is in deficit. Rupee was devalued in July 1991, around 20% we devalued, and this encouraged the export and discouraged the import. Due to that, we were able to overcome from the bad condition. Also, we removed the control on foreign trade. Previously, we had a given only 5 years for the if anyone wanted to do the foreign trade, they were had to acquire a license first, and this was only for 5 years. Now these all restrictions were totally removed over the external trade, and it was totally open for the competition. All sort of goods except those goods which are very important for the nation was given freedom. Without any license they can be able to interact with the other nation. Even we had done modification in tariffs rates also. Previously we had a high tariff rate on import and export. Now it was export was totally free and import was reduced, the rate was totally. We have also done the convertibility of rupee. Previously, before 91, the partial convertibility was allowed. Before 91, that if this material we are going to buy for rupees 10,000 and in Indian rupee, if it is worth rupees of 10,000, we had to, that time we were getting only 8,000 or 8,500, means not full amount we were getting while the trade. But after 1991, there was full convertibility of rupee. Okay, so this was the measures was taken for the globalization. Now let's see what were the positive impact of globalization in the nation. If we see the positive impact, there was huge, that we adopted new and flexible production method because were able to compete with the other nations. So we had a modernization in the production field. We reconstructed the production and trade patterns. Previously we were having the traditional patterns. Now the patterns was totally changed according to the upgraded era. We raise our foreign capital. Our quality of the product was improved. Now we had a able to contribute in the rise in the generation of employment condition. We increase the condition of banking sector, financial sector, foreign sector, and also in India, the technology were increased. But the negative impact, whenever we have to write the positive, there will be some negative impacts also. These are the arguments against deglobalization. The arguments against deglobalization says, due to that, we were totally ignored our domestic industry. So there was loss of domestic industries. Human resources was exploited because we wanted to have more and more profit. Income was declined as it was in concentrated in few hands. So the per capita income was not so good. Unemployment, though we have seen in the positive impact we have written, there was rise in employment, but there was also rise in unemployment. So it's a contradictory point, because unemployment was also one of the cause of globalization. Many of us in our country, the human resources are not so educated and skilled, so there was many people who were not skilled, they got unemployed, and those only who were having the good human capital sources, they were employed. There were transfer of natural resources between the nations, so lots of things we were lost, lead to commercial and political colonialism. Earlier, we had no such kind of interaction, so there was no political interference now. But due to globalization, there was political colonization also, as you all right now see in the international market, the China, how he has curbed over the market. There was widening gap between the rich and poor people. The rich people become richer and poor become poorer, so this created widened gap between. and we were totally dependent on a foreign income. So foreign institution created dominance in the nation. Many of foreign institutions came in India and opened their industry, and they dominated to our economy. As you all know, there are a number of companies who are not Indian, and they are controlling over the market. So this was the positive and negative side of globalization. In the next, we will study what was the outcome of globalization, and also argument against the economic reforms and in favor of economic reforms. If any doubt regarding these all things, if you have, kindly do contact me, comment in the comment box below, and ask me if any doubt you have. Okay, till then, enjoy and have a nice day.